Today we're analyzing Cillian Murphy. I'm at a hotel, so bear with me. Let's go. So here are the facial thirds, all right? And these are actually pretty good facial thirds. The one thing I'll say is his middle third is on the longer end. We'd want this 1% less, but as you guys can see, these are the ideal thirds, and these are his thirds. So they're literally almost perfect. So these are great. Total facial width to height ratio, 1.37. So his face is 1.37 times taller than wide. And it's on the longer end. You know, we do want to see closer to that 1.33 to 1.35 range, but this is still in a very normal and ideal range. He did receive the full points for his face shape. In terms of his jaw, it's 91% of the width of his cheekbones. So this is wide. This is ideal. Again, 92% is the upper end of the ideal range. So this is perfect. Now, normally the lower third proportion is not a very important facial harmony measurement, but his is 39.7%. So what this is depicting is that in the context of his lower third, his mouth is very far down. So if you look at my lower third, my ratio isn't ideal either. It's actually a slight flaw. You can see my mouth isn't as far down on my lower third as his. So he has a pretty long filtrum, and his lower third is just pretty far down on his mouth is pretty far down on his lower third. So this is actually a moderate flaw, almost a major flaw. In terms of his eye spacing, it's actually perfect. He has 45.9% eye separation ratio, which means the distance between his pupils relative to his overall facial width is around 46%, which is perfect. This is literally perfect eye spacing. And then in terms of his eyes being one eye apart, they're almost exactly one eye apart. So he has perfect eye spacing as a whole. His mouth to nose width is actually a minor flaw. So again, we want this at 1.38 times at the low end, and in his case it's 1.36. So when we look at this, right, we see his nose could be a tad less wide and his mouth could be wider, because we see his mouth doesn't really intersect with both of his irises. The corners don't intersect with the irises. So we want the mouth to be a little bit wider, nose a little bit less wide. This is a minor flaw. His facial width height ratio is 1.87. Again, we want this at 1.9 at the low end. And again, here are my examples I kind of show in the bottom left here. Brad Pitt, it's like 1.93. And then you guys can see what 1.52 is. Again, he's unattractive for other reasons, but it's not a good measurement. This is a really crucial measurement, and a 1.87 is not bad. This is not a bad measurement. He loses half the points though, because, if it was like 1.97, it would look a lot better. And based on his total face shape, it was 1.37 times taller than wide. And this facial width height ratio, these things in conjunction and his lower third proportion, all these things in conjunction are leading to a somewhat taller and slim facial appearance, if that makes sense. We would want to see a little bit more of a compact face, all things considered, for his face. Again, another huge flaw, actually. A 1.75 chin to filtrum ratio. So we can see his filtrum, I drew the line slightly incorrectly, but trust me, the measurement's good, of his filtrum relative to his chin is 1.75 times, okay? And we want the chin to be at least 2 times the length of the filtrum in men. Ideally closer to like 2.5, okay? So compared to what's ideal in masculine, you can clearly see his filtrum is just way too big compared to his chin. This is a moderate flaw. Okay, not the most important measurement, but it's a fairly large flaw in terms of this measurement. His mid-face ratio, ideal, almost 1-to-1, 0.96, we would want it closer to 1-to-1, but it's actually still in an ideal range for men. Again, his eyes are 6 degrees positively tilted. This is ideal, perfect. He has a perfect jaw frontal angle, 90 degrees. This is great. We could afford it to be a little bit flatter, a little bit more acute, but this is great measurement. We see in terms of the ipsilateral alar angle, there is a 6-degree deviation between that angle and the jaw angle, right? It's at 84 degrees. So 6-degree deviation, this is a little bit more than we want to see. We would prefer these measurements to both be 90 degrees, okay? But still, very minor flaw. Perfect lip proportions. We do always want that lower lip at 1.4 to 2 times larger than the upper lip in both men and women. There's a little bit more variance for women, but this is ideal. Looking at the eyebrow low-settedness, these are actually low-set eyebrows. So from the upper lip to the eye line, divided by the upper lip to the lowest point of the eyebrows is 93%, okay? And again, for low-set eyebrows, we want this to be 90% or higher. So he's well into the low set eyebrows. Now, his eyebrows are kind of sparse and not very dark, which we'll touch on later. But in terms of just the settedness, it's ideal. He actually has a compact eye shape. Now, I do think in this image and other images, He does squint sometimes a little bit, but people in the past have marked this as unideal. There is no way it is below 2.8 times wider than tall, which is the low end of the ideal range. So regardless, his eye shape is definitely ideal. In this image it's about 3.4, in other images it was about 3, sometimes 3.2. Generally, his eye shape is compact enough to be ideal. Eyebrow tilt, 7.5 degrees, ideal. Neck width relative to jaw width. So on ideal, his neck is a bit too thin. Again, we want the neck to be 90% or more of the jaw width. And his is 86%, as I said. And you can see we just want this neck to be, ideally 100%. We just want this neck to be wider. So a small flaw there. Bitemporal width, this is on the very upper end of the ideal range of the hairline width to the cheekbone width. High set cheekbones. This is like very similar to Sean O'Price's actual level of cheekbone setness. His cheekbones are a very good feature, which we'll touch on a little bit more later, but they're very high set. And yeah, that's the front profile. So, a few minor flaws, the philtrum, the neck width, but generally, as you guys will see, his harmony is actually quite high. Pretty good. He nails the eye spacing. He nails the jaw width and angle and things like that. But yeah, let's hop into the side profile. No recession, but almost. You guys can see we draw a line down at the Frankfurt horizontal plane. We draw a line down from the nasion, and his chin slightly protrudes past, so he's not recessed technically. Facial convexity, this is just measuring the flatness of the profile, considering the brow ridge, subnasal, and the chin. This is ideally flat. This is again another convexity measurement, ideal. This one just considers the nose. Another convexity measurement, ideal. Nasolabial angle, this is just the philtrum to the nose. This is ideal. This is ideal. We just draw a line to the nose to the chin. We want to see a little bit more distance between the upper and then the lower lip. This is ideal. Hold away H line, again, the chin to the upper lip. We want the lower lip to touch this line. Perfect. Statter line, we just want these lips to touch from the chin to this sort of sub-nostril. He passes it. Birthstone line, this is ideal. The line I drew is a little bit thick, but the chin to the actual subnasal, and we see a bit of protuberance there. Perfect gonadal angle. The angle that the angle that the ramus and the mandible make. It's the gonadal angle. It's 120 degrees, which again, you want this between 112 to 123 in men. He nails this perfectly. The mandibular plane angle, again, when we saw the 90-degree jaw frontal angle from the front profile, that obviously almost always clues us in to the jaw inclination being good from the side. And this is no exception. We see a nice inclination of the jaw from the side profile as well as the front. Now, this is actually a small flaw. Again, we want this to be 30 to 36 degrees. In literature, we will see up to 40 degrees as being normal, but I trust the actual case studies of attractive men over the general population literature, obviously, in terms of coming up with the ideal ranges. So this is slightly unideal, super small flaw. Nasal angle, this is ideal. Again, his convexity, the flatness and the relation from the side of his nose, his lips, his chin, and his brow ridge are all quite good, okay? He nails pretty much all of this. He actually has quite a masculine brow ridge, a 108-degree nasofrontal angle. This is great, super masculine. Kind of a more boring one, just the relation of, his chin to his lower lip, the angle that makes, and his is ideal. Nasal projection's good. With the height is a little bit unideal. His nose is vertically short, and this makes complete sense. As we saw from the front profile, he has a long philtrum, right? Which means his nose could come down a little bit. We also see from the side that his nose is short. So this makes complete sense. That's a general, one of the flaws on his face is his nose is too short. Orbital vector, this is neutral. This is just measuring the under eye support. How protrusive is it? As you guys can see, this is a negative orbital vector in the bottom left here. His is neutral. It's a flaw. Not a huge deal though. His brow ridge inclination is ideal, 15 to 16 degrees. Depends on the image a little bit. Nasal tip angle. This is slightly unideal. It's a bit too acute. This is one of the least important measurements on the entire face, so this is not a big deal whatsoever. Ramus to mandible, again, this is a little bit too short, and you guys can kind of see the ramus is simply just not very long compared to the mandible, okay? We draw a line down here, by the way, and that's why this line kind of extends there. That's just how the measurement was developed. So yeah, we'd want his ramus to kind of come down a little bit more here, but small flaw. The gonian is below his mouth line, as you guys can see from the Frankfurt horizontal plane, roughly. Lastly, the facial depth ratio, which I added in for this analysis, Hexham's is good, so it wasn't a flaw for him. This is just basically comparing how forwardly grown his face is, and this is considering both the posterior facial depth as well as the anterior facial depth. It's just the entire ratio. And this is pretty average facial depth. It's something like Jordan Barrett, who has really high facial depth. It's nothing like Hexham. It's nothing like Cavill. His forward growth is just pretty average. We want this to be 1.3 times or more. This is just this divided by this. and it's 1.24, roughly average. Not a big flaw, just not perfect. So yeah, let's look at his overall scoring. An 84.5% frontal harmony, which is really good. And then 86.8% side harmony, really good. Overall harmony, around 86%. This is really good harmony, actually. Again, I like to estimate based on the standard deviation of the data I have, what percentile is this harmony. I estimate this is the best out of 10,000 men, okay, in terms of just proportions. So this isn't factoring in things like facial robusticity, bone mass, features, things like that. This is just simply the harmony, okay? His harmony score itself is probably the best out of around 10,000 men. If I had to estimate a range, the best between 5 to 15,000. Facial angularity. So here I have quite a bit of images here to look at. Some, he's a bit older, some in his prime. When we look at him in his best, he has 9 out of 10 facial angularity, okay? It's arguably almost a bit too much in certain images. What we can see here, it's really good. Here, it's really good. Here, it's still really good. Here, it's quite good. Here, it's still good. It just varies a bit throughout the images. For consistency, in his prime, in his best, he had 9 out of 10 angularity, okay? Really good zygote tapering and hollow cheeks, and pretty good mandible definition. It's not perfect, but it's a 9 out of 10 is an extremely good score, okay? So yeah, that's his angularity. Dimorphism, okay? I don't know why this picture is so dark, but anyway. Dimorphism is simply the difference between men and women, okay? So a face like, let me think. A face like Charli D'Amelio is very dimorphic. She looks like almost a girl, you know what I mean? Like very feminine. And then a face like Henry Cavill is also quite dimorphic. He looks like a man, you know? He has a huge jaw. He has a lot of traits that are just very manly, especially in his prime. Another face like that might be, you know, let me think. Give me a second. You know, even Matt Bomer, right? He looks a lot like Henry Cavill. He's very masculine looking. So I have a formula that I consider the differences between femininity and masculinity, and I assess faces according to this. He got a 7 out of 10, which is still an above average score, but he's, you know, Hexam got a 10, for example, right? John Eric Hexam. Cillian is not nearly that level of dimorphism. And here are the main issues. His eyebrow darkness and density, and I kind of color coded how big of a flaw it is. His chin shape. His chin is not square at all. It's feminine. His neck, a bit thin. He has upper eyelid exposure, too much, especially in, you know, other images. You can kind of see how much, like right there is on the far right, bottom right. He has a ton of upper eyelid exposure. It's very feminine, okay? It looks quite feminine in this image, actually. And then his ramus could be longer, right? These are the main deductors of his dimorphism. Now, he does have a wide jaw, good thirds, a good frontal bone, etc. We covered a ton of masculine traits he has, but these are just the main deductors. So again, this will lower his score below his harmony and his facial angularity, which were an 8.6 and a 9 respectively. This is the huge deductor to his score, his features, okay? So features is things like acne, hairline recession, ears that stick out, a bulbous nose, facial folds. These are factored in the miscellaneous features category. Of course, the proportions of your face don't account for, you know, your skin quality, things like that, right? So here are the main deductors. His eyebrow density and darkness is very poor. The nose shape, kind of a bulbous tip. The dorsal aesthetic lines aren't the best. Just it is a flaw. Again, these are more moderate flaws. And then the upper eyelid exposure and the chin shape are huge flaws, okay? He's kind of squinting and lowering his brows here. But again, huge upper eyelid exposure. And again, he has a Dorito chin, just not square at all. And then his under eye area, again, he has the neutral vector and sometimes he has some paraorbital darkening, things like that, even in his prime. So on my formula, he got a 5.1 out of 10 in features. This is the biggest deductor to his score, okay? This is the overall score, a 7.25 out of 10. And this is exactly what I would have visually estimated. A 7 to 7.5 was my estimation before I did the analysis. Makes perfect sense, right in the middle of what I estimated. Because I do have a pretty good understanding of my scale at this point. I've been doing this for years, you know, with hundreds of faces. I've analyzed probably 500 faces at this point, if not more. So, you know, it's kind of just easy at this point. So this is about the best face out of 175 men. This is an estimation. You could disagree. You could say, I think he looks better than 1,000 men, or I think he looks better than 50 men. You can have your opinion. This is just an estimation based on the standard deviation, which is also an estimation, right? So he is considerably attractive and nearly a top 0.5% face, we would estimate. Okay, so again, harmony 8.57, facial angularity 9, dimorphism 7, features 5.1. His overall exact calculated score is a 7.24 on my scale, which again, it's a bell curve. So don't go in the comments, he's not a 7. It's an over a top 1% face on my scale. It's great. It's a great score. He's very attractive. let's kind of talk some more discussion and some theory about his attractiveness level. Again, roughly a top 0.5% face, the best looking out of probably around 200 people, 175 to 200. In real life, he would get instant attraction. He would unanimously be considered good looking by groups of women. Like if he was in real life and a group of women saw him, they would all likely agree, wow, he's quite good looking in his like 20s, early 20s. That said, in higher end venues like modeling shows, high status parties, or in social circles with actors, his level of face isn't anything special. He wouldn't be the best looking person at like a Hollywood high status party. You know, there would be other celebs that look better than him. Best and worst features. So best, the jaw as a whole, definitely his best feature. His facial angularity, his eye spacing, color, and shape. His cheekbones are actually really good, and his full lips. Now, his worst flaws, okay, from, top 5. The severe upper eyelid exposure, definitely his biggest flaw. Wide alar base, that's just his nose, the slightly long philtrum, the sparse and light eyebrows, and the thin neck. Those are his largest flaws. Again, here's just a concept of improving the eyebrow density and darkness. Just a rough concept. You guys can kind of see what I'm getting at. Here's the routine. I won't go over it. I will fix this problem. Neck training. He has a narrow neck. Theoretically, he can improve his looks by simply neck training. 2 to 3 times a week, neck curls, okay? So currently it sits at 86%. I mistyped. We want to get this above 90%. His neck to jaw width ratio. Again, we want to do fat grafting to the upper eyelids. As we can see, notable upper eyelid exposure. By simply using filler or fat grafting, we can see the results of what you can achieve on the right here with this procedure. This would notably increase his looks. Again, this is just the rhinoplasty example. This is not a perfect morph I did, but just a bit narrower. The main thing we'd want is actually a wider mouth, but yeah, would improve his looks. And yeah, here are just the concepts, okay? Theoretically, if this was natural, if he naturally had these improvements, he would be around an 8 out of 10, which would be the best out of thousands and thousands of men, okay? Theoretically, this is just upper eyelid exposure reduced. Again, it's hard to actually fix that with editing. Brows improved, the nose slightly tweaked, and a thicker neck. And these improvements are minor, but they add up. He does definitely look more attractive, more striking there. If you want exactly what I just did for Cillian's face done for your face, click the link down below. This entire document, I'll just do it for your face, okay? If that interests you, just click the link down below. Again, I've been doing this for a long time. I'll help you improve your looks. You get 47 facial measurements, facial harmony scores, an estimated rarity, just like I did for Cillian, give you personalized feedback. Based on the data I see, I will give you every solution to fix it. Also, if you're into surgery, which some of the advice will be surgical, I will tell you which surgeons to go to, what to tell them, what consult to get, etc. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I think Cillian was an interesting analysis. I prefer to do analysis of people who are not perfect, okay? He's definitely a very good looking guy, but it's more interesting. And one more thing, again, my product does have 8 5-star reviews, so it is a good product, just to let you guys know. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Click the first link down below. I'll see you next time.